Welcome, everybody. John just reminded me not to forget to turn on the record button. Thank you, John. We're recording. This is Rick DiClemente with starself.com and Astrology Unplugged. I want to remind you, several people have asked, in case you would like to join us, the link is on my website every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on my website, starself.com, which is like myself, yourself, but starself.com. On there is the link to getting on live during Astrology Unplugged, as we are every Thursday night from 8 to 9:30 approximately. Okay, I'm going to push back what I promised, which was follow up on all the people's charts in front of us, and unfortunately put the chart in front of us of this maniacal killer in Las Vegas, because I found a lot in this chart. Astrologers are scrambling to show his chart, to talk about it. I know a lot about it for a lot of different reasons. I'm going to walk you through carefully. Do not get demystified or mystified or deluded into thinking I'm going to tell you why this guy did it. I'm not that good, and I don't have that guy's birth time. There are a lot of problems, but I do feel that I have a very good understanding of what made him move deeply. This is not the answer, but you should get a lot of insight into Mr. Paddock tonight. You don't have that guy's brain. Thank you. I'm reading people's little chat messages. Thank God I don't have that brain. Yes, ma'am. Okay, let's get right to work on Paddock. And here's this chart. Stephen Paddock. Okay, now bear with me. Be very patient. Here's Stephen Paddock, who was born on April the 8th in 1953. I gave him a noon birth because I do not know, and there are several ways to deal with people without a birth time. None of them are satisfactory. They work in a way. In other ways, they don't work. I don't know where he was born. I do know he was born in Iowa, so I picked the capital of Des Moines. When you're using a noon birth time, it doesn't matter so much as to where you were born. But we do know his birthday is April the 8th of 1953, which gives him a sun in Aries, a moon in Aquarius, Mercury in Pisces, Venus in Aries, Mars in Taurus. You'll notice there is a grand cross. A grand cross is at least 4 planets. In this case, 6 planets involved. 2 opposite 2, 1 opposite 1. 6 planets involved in one cardinal cross. I've got a cardinal cross myself. When I was young and someone did my chart, they put all kind of curses on me in 1971 about my cardinal cross and how awful it would be. And I learned later on by studying that they were absolutely inaccurate. But in this guy's case, he did not handle the cross very well. When you have a birth time, this sun can appear anywhere in the chart. This is how you would look at it if somebody were born around sunrise. When sun gets to noon, the sun would be up here. If he were born around noon, the sun in Aries would be up here. If he were born around sunset, the sun in Aries would be over here. And likewise, around midnight, the sun in Aries would be here. Most of the time, I deal with noon charts, and I put the sun near the top. But in this guy's case, I've got many reasons why I want to put the sun on the ascendant at 18 degrees of Aries. Now, I've had many charts of people born in March and April of 1951 and also in 53. Why do they stand out? Because their sun was just in this area in March and April of 51 and 53, and their sun was opposite Saturn and Neptune in 51 and 53, and in 51 and 53, Venus went around once, and so did Mars. So in many of the cases I've done of these people, they have Venus, Mars together in Aries, they have Venus, Mars together in Taurus, so they have Sun, Venus, Mars opposite Saturn, Neptune. That's very common with people in the spring of 51 and 53. It's very troublesome. It's very dire. Some of them do well. So if you've got it, don't worry, don't freak out. Some people have it, they do well. But I've seen a lot of trouble with this aspect. First of all, he doesn't have the Venus-Mars because it's 19 degrees apart. And if he did have the Venus-Mars, that would give him narcissistic qualities, which an Aries doesn't need anyway. I've talked many times on this show how difficult it is to translate Saturn-Neptune. Very, very difficult aspect to translate. One's real, one is not. One's down to earth, one's up in the sky. One's focused, one's not focused. And when you have planetary aspects to it, it's very difficult to figure out. Where does a personality go? The sun opposite Saturn is somewhat restrictive. The sun opposite Neptune is somewhat effusive and dreamy. Notice his Venus is at 25. The Venus is almost exactly opposite Saturn. I think that was the central problem in this guy's chart, is the Venus opposite Saturn. Now follow me, because this is going to get really complicated. Now, when you get planets grouped like this, you may as well just group them all together, in my experience. You got a Sun Venus opposite a Saturn Neptune, squared to Chiron, opposite Uranus. 4 T-squares, 1 grand cross. We do not know about his moon Pluto. The moon Pluto could be involved. The moon is at H at noon, opposite Pluto, and the moon could move anywhere from 2 degrees to 14 degrees, depending on what time of the day he was born. So I'm tending to think that he's born more in the afternoon, and the moon moving closer to 10, 11, 12, which puts it in opposition to Pluto. So you've got some very complex aspects in this chart. The moon opposite Pluto, the sun opposite Saturn, sun opposite Neptune, Venus opposite Saturn, Venus opposite Neptune, Venus square Chiron, etc., etc. So you've got yourself a very tough cross. Now, when you have just the sun opposite Saturn and Neptune, that picks up, I don't care what time he's born, that Saturn and Neptune picks up a 7th house quality. My caveat is, my prima facie case is, I think he was unable to socialize. I think that since he's in Aries, and Aries is the least, in general, it's the least introspective sign there is, I think he was unable to understand why he could not socialize, and he thus blamed everybody around him for his inability to socialize. Plus, he's got a dad on the FBI most 10 wanted. That can't help any. I think that that was the entire issue. I think that was the issue that blew up last week, was this inability to socialize, is what I believe is the central part. When your sun is opposite Saturn, Neptune, the sun is your sense of ego. It's the sense of the good ego, the sense of self. When it's opposite Saturn, it feels like it can't express itself, or in fact, somebody made it so you couldn't express yourself. This probably comes from a past life. When the sun is opposite Neptune, you don't want to express yourself because you want to think about everybody else except yourself. So you see an innate problem with his ability to express himself, but this was unconscious. A lot of times people with debilitating aspects like this, Arroyo teaches us, end up being extremely talkative, extremely elucidatory, extremely eloquent, because they put tremendous effort in their ability to talk. But it's kind of not real. It's more of a skill they develop, but it's not really attached to a real self that's expressing it. And like I say, the Aries sun usually doesn't notice what's happening introspectively. Then you've got Venus opposite to Saturn, Neptune. Now the Venus-Saturn is exact. That's really complex. Yes, like a mask. Venus-Saturn is very complex. It's very, very common. I see Venus-Saturn in about half the charts I read. I see Venus conjunct Saturn, square Saturn, opposite Saturn. And I think the reason I see it so much, wherever Saturn is in your chart, the reason Saturn causes problems is not because it's the malefic, he's the bad guy, this BS old astrology, is because you take the area too seriously. That's what's wrong with Saturn. Make sure, you're trying to make sure you take it too seriously. And I think that's why so many people come to see an astrologer that have Venus-Saturn, because they can't understand why relating to somebody else is difficult. They can't understand why. So, let's dig back in. This is extremely important. It's Venus opposite Saturn, 24 and a half, almost 26. You're going to see why in a minute. I believe the main problem in the chart is the Chiron. Because what I have noticed, and I have myself, I have Chiron in Capricorn, but mine is in the 12th house. I believe that what I've noticed with Chiron and Capricorn people, they're obsessed with wherever Chiron is in the chart. They're obsessed with it. They've got to lock down this area. I've seen people with Chiron and Capricorn in the second house, and I don't care what you talk about, they want to know, is their money okay? If it's in the 7th house, is their relationship okay? If it's in the 10th house, is my life direction job okay? Because Capricorn is so obsessed with making sure that people with Chiron and Capricorn, I have found it to be very troublesome. I have found very few people get past it easily. Now, Chiron is known for two things. He gets a lot of press for being the wound and the wounded warrior and the healer. And it's exactly true. It's valid. But the other side of Chiron is the side I deal with more. It's what drives you. It's your hero's journey. And I think the secret to this guy's chart is this. You got to remember, you're already starting with a guy with no ability to relate socially. No ability. It probably comes through his dad, but probably was around in a past life. But the Chiron at the top of the chart, he wanted to be somebody. He wanted to be the man. He wanted to be on top of the world. And you get 32 floors up into a hotel with a bunch of machine guns, and I'd say temporarily you're on top of the world. And you got an eyepiece, and you got tripods, and you're shooting people, and it's nuts, but he's on top of the world, is what I'm thinking. Now, he's got a moon in Aquarius. Now look at the combination of a sun, Venus, and Aries, a moon in Aquarius. You've got somebody here with a very strong Uranus, somebody who loves guns. Aquarius, the Aries, the Uranus, and loves being aggressive, loves being assertive, he's going to do what he says he's going to do. Yeah, he's got Mercury in Pisces, but it's almost worthless, really. Look at the Mars in Taurus. Look at the Jupiter in Taurus. Do you think he's going to stop until he's finished? He's going to keep on pushing, push, push, push until he's done. Look at these other things I found. He's got the Pluto trine to the Sun Venus, and that gives him very positive, strong Scorpio traits to be able to deal with large amounts of money, big business. He's got the Chiron trining Mars Jupiter. But look at this, and this is where I think he got all his organizing ability. From the moon in Aquarius, but also this Uranus trine to Mercury. This Mercury trine to Uranus. I think this is why you can picture this guy with notebooks and buy this and buy these bullets and get this and get these cameras, and he's got this whole thing planned. That's not an Aries thing. Aries is put me on the roof, leave me alone, I'll shoot him. The Aquarius is all the planning and the drama of all the checklists and Excel spreadsheets and all the things you got to buy and the plane tickets. And I understand he was trying to find, and I don't think that he was planning on killing himself. I think he was trying to find an escape route. What he didn't count on was the smoke alarms going off. Anyhow, the thing you have to ask is this. What was building in this guy? That's what so many astrologers miss. It's not where the planets were the day he shot. What was building inside of him? This didn't happen in the last 2 years. And I've heard neighbors say that he was aggressively unfriendly. The more they're finding out about it. What was building? Well, you can't find out what was building until you find out what the basic problem is. The basic problem is the inability to socialize. So when you're unable to socialize, what happens? People put you down. What does it appear like? It appears like they're attacking you. The world's attacking me. Never to think that it's maybe something I'm doing. So I'm saying all along, whether this is a lack of fatherly love, motherly love, I don't know what it was. I'm not going to guess. But with the troubled Venus and the troubled Sun, this was building and building and building and building until the final Martian or solar lunar trigger happened. So take a look here. Okay. We know the sensitive spot is the Venus, Saturn, the Chiron at 20. That's pretty close. 21, 26, 24. Where has Pluto been all this time? Right here. Pluto all this time, the last 2.5 years, has been sitting on his midheaven. And when it's been near that Pluto, it was at 16.5 when he went off. It was at 16.5, which is pretty close. It doesn't need to be exact. The Pluto was up there saying, okay, you need to take your position in the world and you need to get even with all these people that kept you from socializing, from being socially accepted. So Pluto's floating around here at this critical 18th degree. Let me see if I got that right. 19th degree. I'll tell you why that is. This guy was an avatar. This guy was not just a mass killer. This guy had to appear in our consciousness because of what we've been failing to do since 1965, and that's where the 18th degree comes in, which I'm going to get to. Look at the sun. 18, 25, 20, 24, 22. Well, where's Uranus been? Uranus has been here. It's at 27 now. Uranus has been at 18, 19, 20, 21. Been going back and forth over here, fighting Pluto, which is here. This guy is the absolute avatar of the This guy is the explosive period at the end of the chapter where we look back at the 60s and we see how we failed in so many ways. Let me explain it to you. In October of 65, October 8th, the sun and moon were in early degrees of Libra. And when they conjuncted on October 8th, you had a Democratic president, you had Uranus and Pluto, and I'm sorry, I'm wrong. They were in the sign of Virgo. They were at 18 degrees of Virgo. And I've got videotapes of this out on YouTube. They were 18 degrees of Virgo. Is that right now? When those two planets conjuncted, that's when you saw the beginning of people's rights, black rights, voting rights, women's rights, Medicare, Medicaid. 51 years later, those planets got it at a right angle. Where did they get it at a right angle? When two planets are born and they open up to a right angle, even if it's 50 years or 150 years later, the open angle is when they get tested. Look at the chart. Where did Uranus and Pluto, after they conjuncted in this area in Virgo, all those years later, Pluto got to here, Uranus got to here. So in the past 3 or 4 years, Pluto has been here, Uranus has been here. For everybody, let alone this guy's midheaven, let alone right on this guy's grand cross, let alone on his maniacal Chiron, where he wants to be on top of the world. But what happens during the opening square? The opening square is like a grade report where we look back at what was started, what was born in 65, and what was born were all these humane things. We're going to take care of the common man. We're going to take care of people. This is why you've seen all these issues that went to sleep for so long. This is why all these issues have been reoccurring such a paramount way the last years. Voting rights, women's rights, birth control rights, black rights, Medicare, Medicaid, all that stuff. That's why it's come back up. But when you look deeper, here's the secret. When you look deeper, the 18th degree of Virgo, which is where they started, the meaning of the 18th degree of Virgo is to learn by your intuition and not by your brain. To learn by your heart and not by your brain. That's what was born in the 60s. It was a subtle message that a lot of hippies picked up, a lot of yippies missed it, and a lot of people thought the hippies failed, but all these very subtle undercurrents that started got their start in 65. It wasn't the Beatles bringing it across. It wasn't Bob Dylan. It was Uranus and Pluto. So we've just had our report card come to us telling us very clearly that we've not been doing very well with this learning to follow intuition or love as opposed to the left brain logic, which is lack. So ultimately, the guy gets up on the 32nd floor to shoot people because he is a representative of what's in the global consciousness. He's certainly not up there thinking about oneness. So what happens is the Pluto-Uranus is causing so much incredibly powerful stress here. Uranus here, Pluto here, Uranus here, Pluto here. Buy a shotgun, buy a gun, buy a machine gun, fix this up, get a gun, get a camera, buy it up. Tension, 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 building, building, building. And I will guarantee you in the last 3 or 4 years, and I've kept you all informed every time Mars got involved. When Mars gets here, when Mars gets here, when Mars gets here, when Mars gets here, we get another one coming. I will guarantee you each time Mars got to those points, he thought about doing it. He planned about doing it in other cities. He bought more stuff. The moment wasn't right. So all of this is happening. Why? Why is it happening? It's happening at the higher consciousness level of how much are we going to allow this to exist in the human body? How long are we going to allow this to exist in the greater body, which is the global body? Everybody's walking around saying this is insane. We can't stop it, right? I mean, everybody's going like this. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. That's because that's how much we did not learn during those 51 years. Those 51 years should have been years where we developed our intuition. A lot of people did. A lot of the great healers grew through that time. A lot of wonderful healers out there, a lot of movements get A pluses. But now the other one's got to go. Something's got to give. You see that. So it's my opinion. I think sometimes when you hear the word avatar, you think about some saint. Well, avatars work in different ways. Avatar can be a moment or an expression or a personification of something very nasty. A personification of an expression of an archetype. Well, this guy's pretty much an expression of doing that to everybody else in the world. I think personally in this chart, it was because he was, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. I'm smart. That was the Uranus trine to Mercury. He was smart. He was stupid, actually, but he was very cunning. And I think that that's what set him off. I looked for the exact triggers. I could not find them. What archetype would that be? Well, which archetype was I talking about? The archetype in his mind would be the hero. I don't know much about the archetype of the killer. I don't think he was thinking about being the killer. I think he was seeing it as the killer. He was killing the people that kept him down. He was killing the people that kept him from being happy, that suppressed him, that kept him from loving. I mean, there's nothing else in the world, right? You love or you don't. The rest is just BS. You love or you don't. This guy, anywhere he turned, he couldn't do it. He couldn't get out of himself. But he wasn't going to keep it inside. And it built and built and built. And that cardinal cross lined up exactly with Uranus and Pluto. Uranus and Pluto. And that's why that was the super, super sore spot in this chart. And then other planets came around. And there we go. So let's take a look here. Let's take a look. This is very difficult, I told you. All right, let me get this wheel up here. I'm putting the planets on the day of the shooting on the outside ring. Okay, the inside ring is his chart. The outside ring is October 1st, right? On a Sunday, yes. Okay, say Pluto's still sitting there. That was the ultimate responsibility. He was almost 17. He was 1.5 degrees from the midheaven, squaring the sun. Uranus had already been over the sun and Venus. What do you think Uranus and Aries says? You think it says pull the trigger or not? Heck yeah, it says pull the trigger. And boy, if Uranus is not a machine gun, I don't know what is. Okay, so Uranus has been all over that. Jupiter is sitting on the Saturn. Mars is back at 16. So I'm not sure exactly what the final trigger was. We need the birth time. But the whole thing came about from this tension right here. And going back to his birth chart, let me see if I can get this up. One more time. Now, I have seen many people. I have friends with these charts, and they don't act out. They didn't get crazy like that. It takes the perfect, imperfect storm. But the Chiron had a lot to do with it, and especially with the Chiron opposite Uranus. Fire signs extrovert. They blame. They don't do well at taking responsibility in general. Water signs, earth signs do well with taking the blame, internalizing, sometimes too much so. But an Aries, a Leo, a Sag, they have a tendency to say it's outside of me. It's not like Mark, but some Aries are like that. And what do you see in this chart? You see a very, very frustrated individual. And where does he turn to with his frustration? To Uranus and Cancer? And all the violence, weapons that he has at home? To the Chiron at the top of the chart? Where does he turn to? He just keeps ping-ponging around with all these issues here. The Mercury in Pisces has no chance to even express itself. The Mars, Jupiter, and Taurus is keep on pushing, keep on pushing. The Pluto in Leo is very proud, strong. It's 1 degree from trine to the sun. So it all just mounted and mounted and mounted. And when you have an Aries with a moon in Aquarius, you have yourself a rebel. You have somebody who just is not going to follow the rules. Maybe the Taurus planets were why he did all the gambling. I don't know. But I think that's really the essence of the chart until we can dig up his birth time. So that's the basis of what I see. I don't want to guess any further, but people explode from personal issues that have gone on a long time. And I'll be so interested in hearing about what he did in his 30s and 40s and 50s. What did he do? What did he try to do to alleviate these issues? What is it that put him up at the top of that hotel? So we can stop now. I'm going to change the muting options here. So if you would like to comment, if you would like to ask questions, that's the essence. So the one thing I'm not seeing is what was the final trigger. And usually the final trigger is Mars or it's the moon to come down to the right hour. But that we don't know because we don't have the ascendant or the midheaven, etc. Yes, Erica, you can unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself. I will unmute you. There you go. Go ahead.
I noticed what looked like a lot of quintiles. It almost looked like a pentagram missing a leg from Jupiter, Neptune, Chiron, Pluto, and Mercury. It's very odd looking.
Well, not only that.
Pentagram?
Yeah, you're exactly right. The pentagram's almost exact, right?
What would that be? What would that do?
I have no idea, and I'm not going to guess. But I did notice, once you said that, I happened to notice this is a bucket pattern from Saturn-Neptune. Yeah. A bucket pattern from Saturn-Neptune. You know what that is? That is constantly being deceived by other people. They're real, they're not real. They're real, they're not real. They're real, they're not real. That's the problem people have with Saturn-Neptune. they can't tell what's real, what isn't real. It takes a very high mind to be able to blend those two disparate energies. One's very real and down to earth. One's very non-earthy and very spiritual. And it takes a very astounding mind to be able to blend those energies. I don't know enough about the pentagram to answer, but I don't think the pentagram is what's behind this. I think the Saturn Neptune in opposition to the Sun Venus, involved with the Grand Cross, having just got hit 7 times by Uranus. I think he just had it. But ultimately, I think he saw doing that would satisfy that Chiron at the top of the chart. And that's not even a birth chart, that's a solar chart. It's Chiron at the top of the chart. I'll be somebody. That's my hero's journey. I'll go out into glory. I don't want to read too much into this because it's easy to look backwards and make things up. We need to find out more about this guy. Okay, other questions? Yeah, Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, my question, one of the things that the investigators alluded to was that something dramatically shifted in him in October of 2016. And that, when I look back at that time, there were a lot of, Uranus was hitting that Saturn, Neptune, Chiron was hitting it in conjunct, and the Pluto, Uranus was directly opposite.
October a year ago?
Yeah.
Well, I think you're exactly right. Okay, there you go. So what's happening? Uranus is at 22. Guess what 22 is? 22 is exactly opposite Neptune. 22 is exactly at the midpoint between the Sun and Venus. So what does that mean? Uranus is between Sun and Venus. This is the same in Trump's chart in a way, opposite the Neptune. What that means is this. Inside of himself, he's ready to break through this block. These blocks are the things that make us mad, out of our mind. He's ready to break through it, but he can only break through it in ways that he can break through it with his own methods. He does it by finding more guns or being more rude. I mean, what is the Aries way? The Aries way is to push yourself through something. It's not the Libra way, which is to be balanced and tactful. So the Uranus, you either, even though it's his Uranus, he's going to experience it as coming from the outside. The world's attacking me. So I think you're exactly right. Meanwhile, Pluto's still sitting in the vicinity. This Uranus is still squaring Uranus. And what does the Uranus square Uranus mean at age 63? The second midlife crisis. That's the one where have I done what I want to do in this world? It's kind of like a bucket list. Again, he wants to make himself known. He's got these millions, but apparently that's not enough. You know, one way of looking at this, Karen, I think is quite plausible, is he may, when he got up on that 32nd floor, he may have been trying to kill his father. I don't know. Maybe. Go ahead, Karen.
And I'm sitting there thinking that, you know, when I see somebody that's just is a high roller and gambles and is a loner, it's like, it's the never enough. The adrenaline high is never enough. And this would have been an incredible adrenaline high for him.
My God, yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
So that's kind of where I go with it when I see the Uranus, like the adrenaline hit was probably a big factor in this. And it just, you know, most people, all his rooms were comped because he won so much, he gambled so much out there. So it was easy for him to do it, but everything started to get easy, and there was no challenge anymore.
Well, the ultimate thing is the self wants free.
And he didn't want to die. He had a major elaborate escape plan, evidently. So that was the other part of the adrenaline, you know.
Well, I think it's the self wants out, and some people will take an extra breath and swallow and suppress it for the millionth time. Other people explode. And in his mind, he translated it as, you people out there are the ones that are keeping me from being myself, is what I think happened. That's very common with Venus-Saturn issues. I don't know. Other questions? Thank you, Karen. Other questions? Waldemar, anybody? Yeah, go ahead. You're unmuted.
I just wonder if the fifth house, where he has Pluto, and the North Node is conjuncting the natal Pluto, and opposition of the natal North Node, has something to do with the way he did this thing, because it's the fifth house has to do with like a very dramatic, very acting type of killing, you know?
So you say the North Node is involved?
Yes, I think the North Node and the eclipse, the last eclipse that was in those houses, I think it has to do with triggering his way, how he's going to do this, you know?
Well, one was at 7 degrees. One was at 28 degrees. I think the planning went way, way beyond before that time, but I think you're right that the eclipses could have had to do with the finer timing, yes.
Because he seems like the personality that he was, and for what I heard, the guy is very wealthy, and he likes to gamble, and he's like the Vegas you know, scene. So I think he's like, I don't know, this was planned not 2 days ago. This was tough, you know, thought about it, you know. So.
This gave him great patience, right here.
Mm-hmm. The fifth house is very...
Not just that, the Scorpio quality.
Right.
What do they say about Scorpio's dark side? That they'll wait for years to enact their revenge. I think that's very Scorpionic. See, I think what's important here, it's very important to bring out these pieces now and try not to go too further with it until we find out more about him. Because I think a lot of guesswork gets involved, people trying to look cute, trying to look brilliant. I think we got the major stuff out. We saw where the major stresses were, and I think we need to find out more about him. Hope to God we find his birth time. It's such a tragic, tragic affair, and we're even starting to see some minute action out of this thing called Congress, which could be unbelievable. Other questions, statements? Yeah, Suzanne, go ahead.
Well, you know, I see extreme value in studying this particular person's chart, but nowhere in the media, nowhere at all in the conversations around the water cooler are people asking, why is our culture so toxic that somebody would accumulate so many guns? And that's another question. He had so many guns. Well, the guy down the street might have just as many, but we allowed that to happen.
Well,
so we live in a toxic cesspool where if you have the right chart or the wrong chart, then it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, and I do think our biggest problem is religion, and that the one release we have is to turn to God. But when we turn to God, we see, what do we see? Oh, my failure to go to church. Oh, my failure to do confessions. Oh, my failure to support my church. Oh, my God, I got to follow these rules. I got to behave this way. We have all the wrong ideas. So we
Well,
have to dismantle all those first. Go ahead.
you don't see it in the leadership. Obama, how many times is he going to say this cannot become the norm? But it is the norm. And people have to wake up. The leaders have to wake up and take responsibility. They call him evil. They call him this. They call him that. Not one person, not one leader would say, we need to reflect on ourselves.
We're very, very backward society. We think we're really far ahead and we're really stupid. We really don't understand what nature's about.
But what is that? What is that, Rick? Is that ego? I mean, what is that?
We are a Cancer country with Gemini or Sag rising. We have Venus in Taurus. We have Mars in Aries. We have all these early signs. We don't have the cosmic sense that's required, like from an Aquarian or a Pisces. We don't have the sense of we're all in this together. We have so much of that Cancer stamp, which is I got to protect my family. I'm going to get a gun to protect it.
Well, the last thing I want to say is, where is the accountability of not only the average person, but our country at large? We have to take responsibility.
There is no accountability with Cancerian energy. Cancerian energy is I'm going to protect mine, and too bad what happens to you. And that's why Cancerian energy has this wonderful side and it has this dark side. It has to be balanced with other energies. And we've got this mindset in this country, I'm going to protect mine.
Well, I have a statement I'd like to make.
Where are you? How's your salad?
I am here. Oh, the salad was delicious. I had some brie cheese with it too. I wanted to say,
you signed up, buddy.
Yeah, we really, as a country, and I'm sympathetic with Suzanne. We as a country cannot afford the kind of security. The cost of providing security for a concert now has doubled. So you know, forget it if you're going to get a ticket for less than $100. But the other thing I wanted to say was that I believe and I feel and I think that life has now been demonstrated as priceless, because you can go out in public and be shot down by a person whose cheese has fell off their cracker, and your last breath could be in the back of a truck on the way to the hospital.
In 1982, in 1983, in 1984, I had a little radio show where I started to do astrology. And I would see certain people going through marvelous Neptune times, which means spiritual opportunity. 99% of the time, when I talked to those people about spiritual openings, they said the following: I don't go to church enough, I go to church more. I don't go to church enough, I do with them. I hope to be a good person. I hope to be a good person. I said, I don't want an attendance report. I'm talking about finding the God inside. Well, we're starting to find the God inside, which is the problem. Because if you don't know God's inside, then you think God is somewhere else, and all you see is lack. And when you lack, you're going to shoot the people that have the loaves of bread so that you can end up with the loaves of bread. That's where we're at. We're going to shoot the people with the food so we can have food, because we don't understand what Suzanne is saying.
There are forces.
We are one people.
There are groups and there are individuals who are practicing power and control in this situation. Mm-hmm. And our media is participating in that too, to a degree. It's like all the little filters and all the lenses that people look through are somewhat distorted and muddy.
Well, they're all different types of insanity. And I watched on one of these unnamed TV stations, very right wing, and it was showing but couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was showing all the dictators in the past 100 years, and the titles that led into this were Do you ever feel like controlling somebody? Well, if you watch this show, you'll find out how.
Yeah, I was just turning on the TV to CNN, and they keep playing the same footage over and over again.
Well, the whole point is it's got to start with guys and women like us. And it is. It's everywhere. There are lots of us out there. We've got to start getting loud and talking and typing and Facebooking and everything, because one by one, what's the story you told me today? Tell the story, Karen. I was on with you earlier, Karen DeBear. You were telling me about waking up. You were talking about one of your clients was obsessed with Lyme disease. Here's a small example. Tell us that story.
That was all they talked about. And I asked him.
He had Lyme disease.
And I just, it was Lyme this and Lyme that. Everything was, in his whole life was around the Lyme. And I asked him why he was giving it so much power.
And he didn't realize he was.
No, he really didn't. But that was where his conversation was. Mm-hmm. But there's so much. I mean, you mentioned Medicare, and the truth of the matter is we can even go back to Social Security, and I've used this example with a lot of people, and they look at me like I threw cold water in their face. But I'm 68 years old, and it's been proven that women in my age group and older made 25% less. And Social Security is based on what you made. And nobody has said, well, because women were penalized because they were women, so they're going to get an automatic 25% more, which would mean they wouldn't have to go get a second job to make ends meet.
Yeah, but the point is you use your intelligence and your knowledge to help this guy to start become self-aware. Right. And that is the point here. And we got to be stubborn SOBs, all of us. We've got to become vocal. We've got to quit worrying about what people think. We've got to stand up. You know, I told you the story recently where one of the women, during one of my readings, she says, I'm in the South and I can't stand going to my gospel church anymore. And it's outmoded and it's outdated, but boy, I'll be ostracized if I say something. And I said to her, honey, you're about the 19th woman from the South that told me that. Why don't you 20 get together? Because you're all feeling the same way. So it's happening. It's changing. It's not anti-religious. It's not anti-church. We need to admit the church is mainly where we go to feel good with our friends and feel good as a group. And we help each other. But that's not the same as finding guidance inside. And in 1965, the conjunction of Uranus and Pluto in 1965, which started all this, was about following intuition, not the brain, not being logical, following the heart message. We all know the small voice inside. That's what came to a peak in that Las Vegas hotel. Who had your hand up? Somebody.
Well, the thing that was nice about it was so many people that really stepped up.
Of course.
I mean, it just, and that's the hope.
Exactly. And we need to keep pushing and keep talking. I'm not stopping until I'm the only one on this show, which might be next week, I guess. Erica, did you want to say something about Jesus didn't want to start a church? Thank you, Karen. Erica?
Yeah, I do. From what we know about Jesus, he just was he was a holy man.
Right.
And he was living his life and wanted people to learn from his example. He wasn't trying to start a church or have power or anything.
It's just like junior high. I'm in the right clique and you're not. That's what it's become. Let's be honest. And what we're learning now, as Suzanne's trying to tell us so brilliantly, obviously, we're all in it. We're all in the one club. It's okay. It's okay. This is why the Course in Miracles is doing so famously, because it's about one world, it's about one mind. We don't need to conquer all the higher principles. We still can't get past Jesus's first lesson. We're not on lesson 2. We still can't get by lesson 1. Treat your neighbor as you want to be treated. Isn't that right? We still can't get halfway to lesson 1. And we've got to stand up to people that state otherwise. We just got to. What choice do we have? Suzanne, you got any ideas? Got any hot ideas?
No, I don't have any hot ideas right now, but I just went through an episode, and people have to, they feel it. Everything's getting smaller and smaller for people. The ecological state of the earth is declining so rapidly. And then now all our jobs are being taken over by robots. This is really happening. And people feel smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you don't have that, you call it the cosmic thing. If you don't have that inner guidance from God, then you could take a whole bunch of people out with you if you have that grandiose thinking about yourself. I'm going to take them out of their misery too, whatever was going through his mind. But you're going to see this more and more, unfortunately. And one thing you can do for yourself and for other people, you have got to give people hope. People have to have hope that their grandchildren will be okay, that their great-grandchildren will be okay, that they will be okay.
Well, you're right. It's hard to give hope, but you're exactly right.
I'll say something to that.
Yeah, John.
Everybody. I'm sorry if I look like I'm nodding off. I'm not. I'm listening. It's just been a long day. Yeah, as far as hope goes, I have it. I know things aren't necessarily going to be easy in the future. Looking ahead, Rick knows because he and I have talked about this. I'm looking ahead to the Uranus-Pluto opposition in the 2040s. I'm looking at the Neptune-Pluto square in the 2060s, though. I mean, these are tremendously huge things that we still have coming. I know it's not all going to be easy, but I do think that I guess you have to have a certain amount of faith that we as humanity can overcome this. I mean, this many people here in this room with Rick care, has been expressed tonight. I think that's a starting point. It may not be much as it appears, but I think it's a lot. I think it's actually a lot more than what it is. And I think as Rick has talked about on other nights, that I think small groups are, I think, going to be what really matters, though. And I also think that's what we're going to see more and more as we get into Pluto and Aquarius in a few years, though. I think it's going to be more about power. Not only power to the people, but power to the group. I don't think it's going to be about big corporations anymore. That's Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto and Aquarius is going to be about...
What's her name? Gabby Gifford? Is that her name? Is that her name? Senator? She said yesterday we got to be bold. She's exactly right. I walk around and see fabulous people everywhere. Fabulous people. You just look into their eyes, look past their junk, look at that smile, look at how worried they are, and look, and you'll see somebody fabulous. And just tell them, you are astounding, you're wonderful and fabulous. Go tell somebody else. That's where it starts. It doesn't start in some big picnic. It starts at the one-on-one level. And Waldemar's over there stirring, so we gotta hear what's coming out of his body language here. Come on, Sad, let us have it. What are you guys thinking? What are you lucky people thinking they're outside America?
Me, myself, and I.
Now, what do you think? What do you think as far as your perception?
For me, I want to let these guys to be the representation of America. I mean, for me, the lesson here is to show the compassion of people. Everything that's happening in the last probably month with the hurricane and the earthquakes and this mass shooting, has the same thing. Everything comes to the same situation where everybody's helping everybody in that crisis mode. Now, if we can do that every single day, if we can do that away from the hard times, you know, maybe the lesson the guy upstairs is trying to tell us is how can you do it in these bad situations. So we're gonna keep giving you bad situations so you can keep getting closer and closer together.
Well, I'll bet you if I stop right now and ask each one of you is doing this. You've already got your things going. You're all different. You're all got your own way. You know, Linda's teaching English and teaching them to be as high as they can. And Karen is healing people left and right, both Karens. And John is educating people left and right. And Suzanne's waving every flag she can. And Elke's on all day long, trying to spur people to think and show them new things. We just gotta not, you know, is this our group where we come back and give ourselves penicillin? I don't know. We just gotta keep re-strengthening ourselves. And Miss Elke is so hot and heavy. Here she goes again. Go.
Well, you've ignored me like 4 times already.
That's because your hand is always waving. I can't share the crowd.
That is not true. Anyways, I was eating the majority of the time. Anyways, there's a vibrational process happening, and it is not only confined to the U.S. There's people in like, I just watched a video in South Africa where the politicians were throwing chairs at each other. You know, like the stupidity is worldwide. But when I was doing the training, I was taught about that. This was going to come. Like, this is like the birthing pains. This is the baby getting pushed out of the birth canal. It's painful. It's incredibly painful to watch this process unfold and to see your own dysfunction. But it has to come up. The crap has to come up, and it's like that's why everybody is so like nobody knows what to do anymore with themselves because all of our crap is coming up big time. You know, some have more, some have less.
You can't stop. It's coming up.
Exactly. It has to come up. It has to be purged. It's a plutonic thing. And we cannot, as much as we want to stop it, we can't. It has to come out. It's like when you eat something bad and you get food poisoning, you have to throw it up. It has to come out or else it just makes you sick. So look at the big picture rather than nitpicking. Is it religion? Is it this? It's all of it. It's the whole thing.
Yes, it is.
It's like it's the diet, it's the toxins in the environment, it's Monsanto, it's the politicians, it's so much. It's like civilization has gotten to a point where we're at the end. We're at the fulcrum of we're going to screw ourselves royally, you know, and there will be a lot of people that will be left behind. And that is the truth. There's been lots of civilizations that have done the same thing beforehand. And they tanked. And either we learn, and unfortunately not everybody is going to learn. And I say this with a detached Aquarian moon, you know, people aren't gonna learn, and but a lot of them will, and they will take civilization further. But we are at an evolutionary jump where we're gonna go somewhere where we haven't gone before. And I feel like really, really kind of like untethered right now, and a lot of people are feeling that same way, especially the sensitives. They're untethered. We're coming unglued from something that has been the story for a long time. And it's going somewhere where nobody has a clue where it's going, but it's going somewhere big.
We have no clues, right?
No, and this is the kind of what we have to look at, like with a detached mind, because we don't have the answers. There's cycles upon cycles upon cycles, and we don't have a clue what cycle really we are in. You know, we kind of think we do, but we don't.
Exactly right. Before I get to you, Linda, Karen raised her hand.
I just wanted to say 2 things about that. One is the only real power that we have in this is to bring in the light to balance out the darkness that's coming up. And that we all lose sight of how powerful we are individually. And that's one thing. And I wanted to share this quote from Carolyn Mace that came today. The great spiritual master's goal was to release us from the madness of being driven by the fear of survival to awakening to the power of the natural laws of nature and the co-creative power of the human soul. In a perfect world, connecting just that one dot would be enough to redirect the future of humanity on a positive course in the blink of an eye.
Excellent. Excellent.
We all have the power as long as we keep focusing on the light.
Excellent. Very good. Yes. Mark, before Mark was Linda. Linda, go ahead.
Well, I want to share something that's not a coincidence. My freshman student paper was due on Sunday. The subject was the Columbine massacre. They were writing about spectacle murder. And of course, the shooting is on the day that the paper is actually due. So what I'm saying is, I think that if we're tuned in to our own instinct about things. I'm not a planner. I just come in and say, we're going to do this essay. We're going to see what happens. But inevitably, the thing that we're working on becomes part of the discussion about the world, the larger piece of things. And if we can get overwhelmed when we're thinking about the problem as a global problem. We can't do anything about so many things right in this moment. But what we can do is take our own work and do our own work and make our own work count in that respect. In my case, I'm trying to teach kids to think. And the purpose for me of doing this article was, well, it sets up something that's coming next. But the other thing is I have global students, and the notion of terrorism for them has become too identified with one religious group rather than
That's right.
rather than with a problem we have as humans about how we don't value life and we don't value other people. So this has been a way for me to just, this week I was able to entirely crack open the notion of terrorism. And it's no longer for them about what happens over in the Middle East or what happens when
That's right.
someone of Muslim descent drives a car into places. Now it's about people who want to make a statement with guns and killing. And so that's going to be 22 people going out in the world with a new idea about that. And we still have half a semester to go on that. The other thing is to say is that, this is going to sound really stupid, but one of the biggest hopes I've gotten from Twitter. And Twitter is often like a wasteland of disgustingness. But I follow, it is truly, but I follow many of the major media figures and a lot of the political figures in the United States, both conservative and liberal. And there's two things going on. First of all, there's a lot of people who've come to understand that these partisan divisions are killing us. And there's powerful and influential people on both sides of the political spectrum who now get that. People, I could name names, but you'd recognize those names. I'm not talking about politicians. I'm not talking about senators and congressmen. I sort of ignore what they say. I'm looking at people who are writing, who are thinking, who are lawyers in major institutions, people in the national security sector. And the other thing about Twitter is you can talk back to them. You can say to people, this is bullshit. Why are you saying things like that? I mean, I am literally trolling Maggie Haberman in the New York Times every single day because she's up Trump's butt. And she got to stop being that because she got a front page gig on the New York Times. She has to quit that stuff. And until smart people, and I'm not rude to her or anything, what I just say is, I can't believe you said that because X, this is why I don't subscribe to the New York Times. That's what I write every day. And you think maybe the 75th day it may occur to her that maybe she isn't doing things right. And that doesn't mean I'm rude, or when she doesn't do when she says something smart, I don't respond to it. But we're in a place now where instead of getting into like food fights with people, like get into dialogues with people who are on the opposite spectrum politically, because we have to find a way to connect. We are all the same.
That's why we need you Libras out there teaching us how to think and to come to the table without killing each other or banging our shoes.
We're going to have to build a lot of bridges.
Yeah, Mark.
But this is this is the great opportunity of the Trump era. I cannot tolerate this man. He makes me crazy. But if Hillary had been elected, we would still be caught in the same cycle. Right. What the election of Donald, we talk about an avatar. With the election of Donald Trump, the absolute evil and disgustingness of the system that we've created is like Elke says, it's being surfaced. It's being brought to the surface. And when we bring it to the surface, we can change it. As long as it was going on underground. Now all these people have to say where they stand on healthcare, where they stand on other things. It's out there now. And it's not going to be an easy fight, but we'll do our piece of it, and then it'll be someone else's turn next. I'm done talking. Thank you. I got to start.
Very good. You had some really great points I want to follow up on later. Next was Mark.
Well, yeah, I'm going to be a little bit contrarian here. So, in my humble opinion, we are, as Pogo said, we've met the enemy and he is us. So, Rick, when you talk about the astrological influences, and you can trace a lot of this back to the 60s, the observation from this point of perspective is that Americans were living such a advanced lifestyle compared to the rest of the world. They checked out. They checked out in the late 60s, the 70s, 80s, the 90s, 2000. They thought the gravy train would go on forever. Right. And they checked out so much that they allowed the politicians and the 1% to run havoc.
Yeah.
Whatever they wanted to do, domestically and internationally. Okay? So when we talk about the value of life, let's look at the perspective domestically, internationally, but let's start internationally. What has America been doing just in the last decade and a half with the drone program over in the Middle East? We have people who sit, these are good people, I'm not saying they're bad people, that sit at Creech Air Force Base out in the West, flying drones remotely in the Middle East, killing families. And we wonder why we get terrorism?
Yeah.
Now, furthermore, when a society sees that you can kill indiscriminately overseas, why are we surprised that we have people that get a screw loose like this gentleman did and starts killing people domestically? We shouldn't be surprised. We've taught people. This goes back to comments people have made in the chat about Hollywood and those kinds of things. We've taught people that life is cheap. And the country as a whole has turned the other way while this has gone on. We need, as you say, Rick, we need to look at ourselves. We need to take responsibility for abdicating our duties as citizens to participate in the democracy that we live in.
Well, two things I want to add to that. One is the blessings to the Sagittarian age, which gave us the internet. Because as you said, Linda, you can get on there and you can disagree with somebody. But we're in a neural network now where you can't go too far afield anymore. You can't go too far with your wrong ideas before you bump into the consensus reality, which is usually smarter and wiser. But the other thing I want to say, I think, is really apropos, which gets to this guy shooting and gets to the charts I do and gets to Venus, Saturn It gets to the details of why we did this chart. You know, Karen, you do charts, and John, you do charts, and Waldemar, many of you do charts. What do you come down to every stinking time you do somebody's chart? What does it come down to? They're blocked. What are they blocked from? They're blocked from letting the God inside out. They're blocked from expressing themselves. They're blocked from feeling that they can say what they want to say. You know, like Michael Weir was on our show, the hypnotist, and to remind you, he said, we're all 9 years old and we just want to be loved. He's exactly right. We're 9 years old. We just want somebody to love us. We want to get up, do our goofy dance, and have everybody go, yay! And that gets back beautifully to what Karen S. was saying. You know, that's what's needed when she's talking about the light. We need to allow other people to be themselves and to say back to them, brother or sister, you're fine the way you are. You're cool. Not my group's right. Your group's wrong. Not the Muslims and the non-Muslims. Everybody's cool. Everybody has something to say.
Well, Mark, that we don't have a democracy any longer. It has been shattered.
Yeah.
There is no democracy here. And that's what we're going to rebirth.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
It's happening. It's happening because there are millennials that know the path. They aren't ready. They're not going to settle. The millennials are not going to settle.
I agree with Susan. This never was a democracy. It was an illusion.
It is an illusion.
Talk to the black people about the democracy they've had for 250 years. It's a lie. It's a lie.
And I think humans are maturing, evolving. We're kind of in our teens, many of us, but we are maturing. And I hate to say the phrase powers that be, but the control and power element of our society is trying to dumb us down.
Well, I tell you what, if I had to get stuck on an island with a bunch of people, I would hope it was this group, because it's a pretty damn good group of people. And I just encourage everybody to keep at it. Keep at it. And I'm telling a lot of my clients, don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to anybody. You know what you're doing. And almost everybody I talk to knows what they're doing.
Well, I attended recently a retirement university where for 2 days a guy taught us about Roth IRAs and annuities and things of that nature. And it appeared that I have not done my homework in this area.
Yeah.
And I leaned on my ex-husband too much for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I left things kind of untidy. And so now I'm going to be 63 soon, and I'm not going to have the kind of retirement that I thought I was going to have. So I've got to be creative and create a passive stream of income where I don't have to bust my butt to make the money. So it's a very challenging time, especially for women over 60. If you're in that 60 to 65, 60 to 66 group, you really have to wake up.
Any final thoughts? Thank you, Marilyn.
I wanted to leave you guys with something that's really cool that I'm involved with here. Saskatchewan is the birthplace of government's funded healthcare. We were the first where healthcare was free. And they're now in the process of redoing healthcare completely. We've just merged our different healthcare regions in order to save money. And I'm involved. I'm what's called a patient family advocate. There is actually a group that where the patients are actually asked what their thoughts are, and we're really being pulled in. And so there's a silent revolution going on that, the patients are actually what it's all about, and they're having active discourse. And I'm involved with all these meetings all the time, and it is fantastic to see these government individuals, these people that have always run the show by themselves, like the doctors were talking to the people that were funding the whole thing, and it was basically a closed system. And they're now realizing the system isn't working anymore, and they're opening up the floor. They actually want the input from the patients. They're not keeping them out of the loop anymore, and that is the perfect way of moving forward. Active discourse and not discounting the power of the people. And that's what you guys are not doing. You're not nobody is listening to the people where you are. You don't matter.
Well,
It's
what?
so sad.
Repeat that?
It says nobody is listening to you guys. Nobody is listening to, government,
What do you mean?
they're just doing, you're cut out of the loop. They're doing what they want to do, and you don't matter.
We're on YouTube. People are talking to other people. People are starting their own show. I refuse to believe that.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying government is not listening.
Oh, government is nothing but us.
Well,
One guy whispering into one gal's ear. That's what government is. The government.
Yeah, the FDA, exactly. Yeah.
Well, we just got to keep bitching. That's all.
Right, and do that.
I'm gonna turn off the end of YouTubers here and tell you to go forward, multiply, and keep on ditching. How's that?